Right, ladies and gentlemen, it's lovely to see you all here in the Lewington Room. This unbelievable space, which just a really short time ago was inaccessible. You had to climb through a roof hatch to get into it, and it was populated almost entirely by spiders. This is one of the great things that came from the arrival 15 years ago in this village of Downton Abbey. Tonight, we're going to be talking about another thing that happened as a result of the arrival of Downton Abbey in this extraordinary village of ours. And it is that some of the buildings, and in particular two of them, the church and Churchgate House, have become two of the most famous buildings in the entire world. This extraordinary fact is that nearly 120 million people, individual people, have watched Downton Abbey over the last 15 years. It's such a breathtaking number of people that it takes your breath away. It really does. And that means that Churchgate House and our church have been seen by that number of people. Tonight, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to find out what it's like living in a house which is one of the most famous houses in the world. I want to introduce you, please, to Maggie Harris, who has kindly agreed to talk to us about this experience. So will you please welcome her?
Oh. Hi, Hannah, thank you.
Well, you're very welcome, Maggie. And I can't tell you how grateful I am to you for letting us talk to you about this, because it is a fascination. And if we're honest, every one of us has wondered what it must be like to have this sort of thing happen.
It's because a lot went on.
I bet it did. And we're all looking forward to hearing all those wonderful stories. Start, first of all, Maggie, just tell us how you came to be here in the first place. I mean, I don't know how long you've lived here, but it will be pertinent.
34 years.
Right.
We came from Surrey. My husband spotted this house, thought, that's it.
Yeah.
Very run down, quite needed a lot of care. But anyway, that was our big hobby when we retired, and we've set about renovating it.
So you bought a house in one of the least known, on the edges anyway, one of the least known medieval minster enclosures in the country, where nobody ever came.
Right.
Ever, didn't you? And you must have been looking for some kind of retreat.
It was going to be a project.
Yeah.
This was a project to renovate it, you see. That was the big thing. And to live in a Georgian house was beyond our dreams. It really was. That's such a pretty setting. We couldn't believe it.
Well, I think, I'm glad you did, because it's so beautiful now, and it's a lovely place. The reason I asked that question is that things have very much changed now. So let's just find out, for you know more than most of us, I suspect, how it is that Downton Abbey came to the village in the first place.
Right. So that was a simple knock at the door by a location scout. Would our house like to be in a period drama? And he said, we'd like to film outside and inside. So, but have a think about it. So whilst we were thinking, he rang up and he said, no, it would be just the outside, and the inside we'll use another house and we'll tack the front of yours onto this other house. And we said, oh, fine, okay, that's okay. Knowing what we know now, thank heavens it wasn't filmed inside, because it's so disruptive. It really is. Having said that, just using the outside and bits of the garden and et cetera, plus the cast, they asked if the cast could be this room here with a bow window that goes all the way back to the back of the house, could be used as the green room for the cast. And that was part of the contract. Yeah. And that worked very well. So it wasn't too much, really. It was about 3 times a year, 3 days each time. Yeah.
And they knew that was roughly what it was going to be. So you knew what you were taking on right from the beginning.
Yes, in that way.
And if my memory serves me, it was a fairly small affair, the first series. That The only thing is, though, that you were the only place, really, where almost all the cast were in the same place at the same time.
Yes, that's exactly right. Because all the for example, a funeral or a wedding or a big event, like when the fun fair was outside, etc., they were all there. So that was very unusual because the downstairs weren't at Highclere, at Downton Abbey. They were in Ealing Studios where the kitchens were mock-up. Because the kitchens at Highclere aren't, I keep calling it it is Highclere. The kitchens there are modern now, evidently, so they had to do these mock-up. So when there was a funeral or a wedding or a big to-do, when they got together, the camaraderie was quite amazing. You could tell they all got on really, really well. And it was like a party atmosphere. And in fact, there was quite a big party at one time. But they all, you could tell, it was really quite nice. And what a lovely bunch of people they were, because we had no idea. We thought some of them might not be very nice, because they were all in the house. And it got a little bit bigger, Oh, Rod and Maggie, would you mind? Little extra bits kept creeping in. And for example, their lunch, there was a catering van down at the back, and so they didn't have to go over to the recreation ground. They said, could they have their lunch in the house, in the green room? And we said, no, in the kitchen. So they all stretched down to the kitchen. So we got quite used to having our lunch with, Dame Maggie or whoever, hair rollers, or whoever was there, just having our lunch together.
This definition of green room is interesting because I've always through my life I've imagined that this was a word for a place in a television studio where people could go and get a bit drunk before they had to come on and do something like this. But it isn't quite, is it? It means it's as opposed to red room. It's
where they can go.
Yeah. Okay.
They have to have these strict rules if they're using a private house. Or, for example, Highclere, which is full of precious antiques, and evidently it was rigidly controlled.
Yeah.
There were lots of murmurings about, so nice here, so relaxed. At Highclere, I think they were watched all the time, so it wasn't a quiet. And generally, they said if we were filming at other places, it could literally be an empty room with some water and hard chairs, and that's where we'd be all day.
And they simply had to lump it, whereas...
They have to lump it, so they quite liked our room.
I bet they did.
Yes, they did. Nice.
That's fantastic. Well, now, when it started, it really was quite small. I mean, those are the days I remember when, for example, the crew, the designers and those sorts of people stayed in local B&Bs, and it was a low-key affair, and of course, I think I'm right in saying that none of us had any idea this was going to grow, did we?
None at all. No. Because we were a bit surprised when we were asked to do this, and mind you, we pricked up our ears when they said Maggie Smith, and it's going to be written by Julian Fellers. I thought, oh, right. Because at that point, I honestly think that a lot of people think period dramas were finished, or they were a bit passé and all been done, And what people really wanted now were nitty-gritty sex, violence, actors scruffy, not being able to understand what they're saying. That's what people want. How wrong were they?
Yeah.
This was quite exceptional, but we had no idea, apart from the fact that what a cast it had. Apart from the young ones who weren't really known at all, you had some really big names amongst them.
So this gave there was that sort of in crowd of actors that there is in the UK. They were kind of there were two of them actually, but this bunch with the fellows lot were our stars. So it gave you a kind of hint. But of course, none of us could imagine that it was going to be the most successful television show in the world. At some stage or another in this conversation, we'll get to see whether or not you regret this. But there was a real change when they started putting together all those vans in the recreation ground and from that kind. Did that change your lives at all, or were they, I suppose, not really much?
No, not really. No.
So what happened when they come? They arrive. This great crew. The set designers come in the day before. They make the village go back 100 years, and then the actors arrive. What happens then in the audience?
The setup was done the day before, so it was and we had to be up bright and breezy by good 7 o'clock. They started about 7, ended about 8 o'clock at night. Right. They were very long days. And sometimes the filming was about 5 minutes out of that, it seemed, in that day. So we'd wake and there'd be these wonderful old cars outside, or old-fashioned milk trolley lorries, and all of them were ready. And that I've never seen so many people. It's extraordinary. And down the side of our house, for example, we had the carpenter, the carpenters, and all the small vans were all down in the yard, right at the back.
Oh, were they? Right.
And often there were masses and masses of electrical recording stuff and screens and the props, the hundreds of flowers if there was a wedding, and it really was quite extraordinary. So then off they went. We were told the day before who would be coming amongst the actors. Sometimes it was only 3, sometimes 10, and sometimes all of them.
Yeah.
So we had an idea. So we'd walk into this drawing room, and there'd be whoever was there.
And you didn't have, what responsibilities did you? I know you were generous, and there's another thing we'll mention later on is the hit they gave to your wine cellar. But they didn't expect you to do anything, just space.
Not at all. No, nothing at all. All the catering was done. They were outside were all the refreshments for them. I mean, they're looked after the whole time. It was just that when whoever was there and we got to know them, that we began to just they'd come down to the kitchen, have coffee and tea and chatter away. So we got to know their private lives quite well, out of the goss, little bits of gossip going on,
It must be what they thought of each other. And all
there's a bit of, yes, exactly.
Well, I think that we'd probably love to know whether or not it is true that the grand dame of Maggie was actually quite fierce to everybody, or not.
She was, actually. My meeting with Dame Maggie didn't get off to a good start at all. I was at the front of the house, and her minder brought her round. She was all in this costume. And he said, have you been introduced? And I, being trying to be a bit clever, I said, how do you do, Dame Maggie? I'm Maggie as well, but I'm not a dame. And she looked at me with that look that she gave Mrs. Crawley when she first met her like there, and offered this little limp handshake, and went, and drifted off. And everything about her said, who is this idiot? I thought, no. Anyway, but then she chirked up a bit, because my Rod would often make a nice cup of coffee or something, and she'd say, oh, darling, that's lovely, I can't drink that muck they serve us outside. So she's exactly as you would imagine. She was the character. And evidently, Julian Fellows based it on a great aunt who taught exactly like she was.
Who was very like her, yes.
Very
think
like her. He actually used her. And I can't tell you how many older American women said, I'm going to be like her when I grow up. I'm going to say exactly what I feel.
Yes, it's a terrifying thought, actually, because since we're all quite grown up now, if we pretend
She did thaw a bit, but I would say she was quite prickly, and I got the strong impression that she thought it was slightly beneath her. That's the impression I got. But she loved doing it, really, because she was with a great bunch of people, and
it was such a big success that it made a dent even in her career. Actually, I mean, she was getting on, obviously, but it really makes a difference, this kind of thing, to even people as big a stars as she is.
Sure, but I think she wanted to be really remembered for her Shakespearean roles.
Yeah.
I mean, she was she'd been an actress forever, hadn't she? But whereas Penelope Wilton, of course, another great actress, was just so charming and lovely and extremely pleasant with everybody, you know. And Jim Carter, the first time we met Jim, there he is at the back there. We were in the kitchen garden at the back here, and we heard this huge voice. Well, I must say, you're very brave, letting a cast come and dump themselves in your house. He's got this huge actor's voice.
Yeah.
And he's just exactly as you would imagine. He's just such a nice chap. They all called him Uncle Jim. And he wanted to come into the kitchen garden because he's a passionate gardener. And that's what he wanted to talk about.
Yeah, really. That's interesting. I wondered whether or not you ever got an insight into their real personal lives, these people, because they're working incredibly hard. It doesn't look like it, I suspect, because film sets are slow things, aren't they? And there's an awful lot of sitting around. But it doesn't relieve the pressure. So they're actually working pretty much all the time. So it's interesting. This you got to know them. You feel quite well.
We really did. We heard a lot about their home lives and what was happening and what was happening with their children, etc. And yes, it was. Yeah, we did get to know them really quite well. It was. But the filming. You talk about the length of the filming. The first series, the second episode, is where Matthew and Mary meet. The wonderful scene where Matthew and his mother come into the house, and he is saying to her, and another thing is, they'll try and marry me off to one of those girls. And Mary appears behind him. Do you all remember this? In her black, looking absolutely wonderful in her black riding gear and and he turns, and of course that's it. He's smitten. And then he follows her out. Meanwhile, just in the drive here are two horses. And she's on the horse, side saddle, and he says, Lady Mary, I'm so sorry, I was only joking. She says, well, it's all a joke. And with that rides off. Well, we were asked if we wanted to watch this scene, and so we stood back there alongside the director, who's in quite a little tent, really, and on a small screen. It was much smaller than I expected. So we watched it, and he came out and said, Lady Mary, I'm so sorry, I was only joking. Well, they must have filmed it from every angle, I don't know whether a plane went over or the horse shifted the wrong way or something. My husband lost the will to live afterwards. I can't watch this any longer. So that just that small scene, because it was quite complicated, I suppose. But there were a lot more other scenes that were really complicated that I was, we were quite impressed with. One particular one, I don't know if you remember, after the hospital, Downton Abbey becomes a hospital, and it's for officers, and one of the maids who's a bit cocky becomes pregnant by the officer, and she's struggling, and the officer dies, and the parents want to take on the child. And Mrs. Crawley's involved in this, and they say, and the housekeeper has been feeding her on the quiet, this girl, and she's in a terrible state, and decides really perhaps the best thing is to do it. And the grandfather was played by Kevin McNally, who is the husband of Phyllis Logan, who was the housekeeper. And he plays the nasty grandpa, and his wife is a fairly unknown actress, but they were in the drawing room. The child is one of they were twins, so they have two of them in case one kicks off and doesn't act. And they were 3. So they were in the room here. There's Kevin McNally and this woman. There's Penelope Wilton and Phyllis Logan, the parents and these little boys. And Kevin McNally is building up a big, big rapport with these children and playing with them, etc. Because they have to come outside the house, and the little boy and the mother of this little boy, the maid, is saying goodbye and saying, Charlie, you've got to be a good boy and you've got to go with Grandpa, who's in the dry out here. The child actually says, Mummy. It's extraordinary. And she kisses him and gives him to the grandfather. And the car was waiting here. And we found out afterwards, and the father was in the back of the car holding this child up by his legs going, wave, wave. And so this wonderful scene, which I thought was so perfectly acted, is this little boy waving from the back of the car and the maid crying.
Yeah.
It was just... And I'd caught her before this scene in the back corridor of the back of this room. And I said, Amy, would you like a cup of coffee? And she said, I will, Maggie, but I'm just getting sad at the moment. And she was looking at her, and she was completely taking herself to another place to say. And it was one of the most moving scenes. Do you remember it? It was just gorgeous. I'm sure the men won't, but the women will.
That's a wonderful insight into how it is to be an actor in these things. And also, it accentuates the importance of the role you played for them, which was that business of being able to get out of this character for 5 minutes to at least be more relaxed. It must be a very pressurized business. What was it like when because as things progressed and it became more and more successful, the village filled up with paparazzi. Yeah. There were long lenses on the roofs all around the square, and all that kind of stuff. Did that impinge upon you, or you must have seen it from the inside, because it must have been tricky for them, wasn't it?
Yes, it didn't really impinge, not particularly on us. I have to say that at one point it was, that became later when it became so famous and we had so many visitors to the village. That wasn't such a good time for the village, I don't think, because it became rather intrusive.
Right.
But when you say that time, when it had really taken off, and a particular scene, Mary's marriage, first marriage, she, of course, got married in the church. So this was a big scene of her coming, with her husband out of the church. So she put on her wedding dress in one of our bedrooms. When she came down to the front door, this was at the time of paparazzi, who were all desperate to see this, frankly, quite awful Edwardian, droopy old dress that she had on. So they had to put screens all round here, and there were these paparazzi with these great long things over the top of the screens. Yes. She was taken out of the front door with huge umbrellas and blankets round her, etc. And when she got to the front door, she said, well, this is ridiculous. I feel like Madonna. Because she doesn't talk like Lady Mary at all. She's an Essex girl like me, and her voice is an Essex voice.
Wonderful.
Yeah, so that was, yes, it was beginning then
So it becomes, I mean, it grows considerably. They started staying a little longer, slightly longer in each visit. And then the crowds of extras and things that were happening. And am I right in thinking, I think I'm right in thinking, in fact, the room may be full of people who were extras in the first series, because I know obviously people were, but then eventually the professional extras started coming in. We know a few of them because they stayed with us at the time, and I remember all that happening. Those people presumably came nowhere near you. You only had the main crew, main cast, I mean.
Yes. Now, who would have been an extra? Harriet Waters was big extra.
Right.
Patricia Hodge.
Oh, right, okay.
Who was in Creatures, Great and Small. We never met Nigel Havers.
No.
He was a cad. He was an extra.
He was a real cad. He did admit that his piece in Downton Abbey was spent entirely in bed, and therefore he didn't actually need to come anywhere near Banton, let alone the church.
Well, there's an inference.
Yeah.
There's an inference of bed.
Yes.
Is it too friendly with one of the ladies' maids? He's a cad, and Dame Maggie, of course, the Dowager Duchess, Countess, has sussed him out straight away. And she's very suspicious. And he, of course, is after Hugh Bonneville's sister.
Yes.
And Dame Maggie's going, she knows exactly what he's up to. And then they do actually find him in a compromising situation. Well, he's pulling me jacket round, and the maid gets off the bed, and that's all you see. That's all you see. So anyway, she's proved right. As she says in it, I'm always right.
I'm always right.
Yeah.
I can actually hear her saying that.
Yeah.
It's absolutely right. Yeah. So you'll come. There is another whole side to this whole business. We've talked about the television series and how it developed and became more famous. They then started making movies. And that, I imagine, was something slightly different, wasn't it?
Yes, a different atmosphere, actually, when Carnival. Yes, we weren't very terribly involved in that.
Right.
However, there were a few scenes. I think the first film, we saw Rob Collier-Brown, who played Nasty Thomas, who I think was Rod's favourite actor. He just the most charming bloke. He really is. Hey up, Rod, can I give you a hand? He always says, all right, I'll give you a hand, Rob. I'm useless, but I'll give you a hand. I'm moving chairs or something or other. And he was there with another actor I didn't know. And then another film, we saw Dame Maggie and Penelope. And again, they used the house. And then another time, the final film was Penelope and Kevin Doyle, who plays Mosley, the valet.
Yes, I see.
And so really we were hardly involved in a way, except for that odd day.
Right. Okay.
So that was, but it was different, and the series had finished, and etc.
So I've jumped a little bit too far ahead, really, because it's a very separate entity, the Beatles. And so all those wonderful moments when they were beginning to let their hair down at the end of the television series, they knew that series, I think it was 6, wasn't it?
6 years.
Really was the end.
Yes, yeah.
And that was, I think I'm right in saying that some fairly interesting, sort of rather more relaxed events happened towards the end of that.
You're talking about the party.
Yeah.
Well, the final bit for us, it was the final filming in Bampton. They had a couple more days to do at Highclere. And we had, it was glorious weather, and Rod and I were outside having our lunch under this Raj tent thing. It's quite big, and quite a big round table. This wasn't the party. This was another day, I think. They were all there for Mary's second wedding, which is that picture at the top here. She's now marrying Charles. Can't remember his name. Charles. Can't remember. And it's Brumpters here. Sorry. Yes, it's Matthew Good. I can't remember the character's names. second. Anyway, Matthew Good, who was quite divine. Anyway, so that all those actors were the most handsome, gorgeous. They really were. And of course, they've all got a bit of makeup on, so they're even more handsome. Anyway, so we were having our lunch outside and a glass of rosé, as you do. And they drifted round with their little package lunches and said, "Oh, hi, Rod and Maggie, oh, can we sit here and have our lunch?" "Oh, yes, of course." So Rod said, "I'd offer you a drink, but of course you can't, can you?" And they went, "Not all," because some said, "If I drink, I'm finished." Well, an awful lot of rosé later. Ron kept going backwards and forwards down to the cell. I think we got through about 20 bottles of rosé. Yeah. And even Dame Maggie was had a few. And she kept saying, "Oh no, Rod, darling, no more, no more." Anyway, after they staggered off, Mary and whatever his name was, staggered off to get married, and really staggered off to get married, and did that, came back, and Michelle said, "I can't take it any longer, I've got to go in that pool." And started taking her clothes off. And Hugh Bonneville said, "Well, they can't suck us now, can they? So I'm going in." So he took off his clothes. Nigel Havers said they all stripped off. They didn't. The girls were down to their slips, which the famous Marks and Spencer slips, which they wore under their costumes, and the boys were in their underpants. So in they went to the pool. Our two granddaughters were in with them as well, because they had taken part as two little village girls running in front of the wedding party, little fags.
All right.
It was cut. So tragic. It's so disappointed. Anyway, so in they went in the pool. So the costumes, of course, which were going to be worn the next day, because they're always going between these two places, got a bit crumpled and a bit wet, and they got really told off because the costume people had to be hours hiding them and getting them all sorted out, you know. Yeah. But it was lovely. And they signed a big book later and said, "Michelle's ended. I'll never forget that day. It was glorious."
Yeah,
it's gone. Yeah. And it was like a wedding party that had taken off, and there was everybody got on, and it was a magic sort of day. It was just, the boys played cricket on the lawn, and it was relaxed, and it was lovely. And it was the end. It was the finale. So it was quite sad in a way. Yeah.
Well, it's lovely to get the picture that these people worked together for so long. I mean, not all of them were there all the time, but a lot of them were right through it all. And they maintained that sort of friendship.
They really, really have, yes. Yeah. A lot of them are very, very friendly. Yeah. And the girl who played Edith, of course, is now with the boy in the front here next to me, Michael, and they're married. They've got a little boy. And for the filming of the film, Phyllis Logan said we all took turns looking after Luca, the little boy, whilst those two were filming. Yeah. And Michelle Dockery, hers was a sad story, because at the end of the TV series, I was sitting with her in the kitchen with Maggie, I think it was, and she said, "Great news, Maggie, I must tell you, I'm engaged." And I said, "Oh, that's tremendous, and who is it?" And she said, "Oh, it's a friend of Alan Leach. She's very friendly with Alan Leach. Alan's going to be the best man. It's a friend of Alan's from Cork. And wedding's all planned." Within a very short time, that boy was ill.
Oh, dear.
And tragically died he died very quickly from a brain cancer. So that was very sad, yes.
That's a tragedy, an absolute tragedy.
Since then, she met someone else, and she's married, and in fact about to produce her first first child. And we went to the premiere of Rod and I were invited nicely by Penelope Wilton to go to the premiere of the last film.
Yeah.
And we saw Michelle. Big hugs, and Hugh. We saw Hugh, and
it's lovely to hear that too, because it would be so easy for them to move on, wouldn't it? But they still had a sense of affection for your lovely house and your lovely family.
Yes, they were so appreciative. And Maggie Smith, who up to then had always been a little. Well, she had thawed at some point, but suddenly said, mind you, I think it was quite a few of those, said, thank you, Rod and Maggie, so much for making us so welcome over these 6 years. And especially, she said, for the young actors who have worked so hard. And it's been a pleasure coming here. And it was such a lovely thing to say, and we were, very, very pleased. And we said, we've loved having you. They became like friends. It was really nice.
Well, Maggie, you've had this extraordinary experience. It's come to an end, except, of course, that it hasn't, because now we all have this experience of this village being very different from what it used to be like. It all has many advantages, as we already know. I know that right at the very beginning of all this, I did a little bit of research to find out what it was like in other places where very successful films have been filmed. And I know that 50 years later, it is still the case that Yorkshire gets thousands of visitors for Last of the Summer Wine tourists and those sorts of things. These things were made 50 years ago. So the future for Bampton is very interesting. It's clearly something we're all going to have to live with, but you in particular, I know that you have absolutely no reservations about this. You don't mind in the slightest, do you really? But
no, not at all. We're lucky, Robin. We are lucky that we can shut those gates. We have had incidents where the gates are open, people wander in.
Yeah,
they do wander in. Yeah. Oh, we didn't realise it was occupied. Right.
I know you've had some very funny stories of, yes, but you carry on because
the American lady.
Yeah.
The American lady. Yeah, she. Came out into the drive. The gates were open, of course, and there was this older American lady and she said, "Oh, hello. Here you are, pretty as a picture. Are you in this film?" So I said, no, I'm not, because I live here. So she said, "You live here?" I said, "Yes, this is my house." Oh. So to sort of jog her memory, I said, "You remember this house was given to the heir and his mother, and Mrs. Crawley and her son." "Oh," she said, "so you bought it from Mrs. Crawley." So I said, no, it's a TV series. "Right," she said. So I said, "No, because you remember the son died? He died in a road accident." "Ah," she said, "you bought it when the son died."
So you couldn't shift her from this extraordinary fantasy.
And you get all sorts of funny stories because you get. Well, at one time, the tour party, with these people bringing them round. At one time, that did get very noisy. We had a shouty one. "Come this way! Here's the..." Oh, Lord above. We could hear them out here. And I remember once standing behind the gates, and there was a party here. There was a shouty one with, I think it was a boy this time, with his back to the gate, with this group all listening. And he was waffling on. It was all wrong. Everything about it was sick. So I put my hand above the gate and went... And there was a sort of titter from this crowd. Well, he didn't know, of course, because he had his back to the gate. And then he said something else, which was right. So I then went, and another sort of titter. Well, I had to put him out of his misery and say, but they did get quite noisy at one time. But that calmed down a lot when the coaches were forbidden to come. Those big coaches were forbidden to come.
Yes.
I think one day, didn't we have? How many was it? What's the biggest number?
I don't know, but it is. Jenny will know.
Would know.
But yes, it did got side down, but some measures were taken to dissuade them. It is from dropping them in the square.
The cottages, the wonderful cottages here and there, 1912, their date when it started. The Titanic goes down in 1912. There were people actually, looking in their window with cameras. It was just awful.
They did that business with selfie sticks through the first floor windows and things like that. It did get quite...
but that is really, really...
And it stopped, has it? That's interesting. Yeah. I do wonder whether... I mean, I know that we've been trying very hard to get to the tour companies to get them to ask people to remember that it's a place where people live. And it's certainly my impression has been that it's been better than it was.
Much better.
And the professional guides are usually a bit more better than that. But I do think it's going to last for another 50 years. So I think we have to get used to this.
Generations are watching.
They are absolutely.
I was only reading in the paper the other day of a chap who he's a doctor, and he was talking about looking after himself, what he ate, exercises. And he said, and then give myself some pleasurable downtime. I'm watching the whole of Downton Abbey, which I had never seen.
Before. Yeah.
So you're getting new people being introduced to, or thinking, I've heard so much about this series, I'm now going to watch it. And I personally, I'm totally biased. I thought it was wonderful. It was a bit clunky at times, but I thought the storyline was so good. It was historically so interesting, and the huge effect on everybody, the seismic event of the Great War. Yeah. I thought that came across very well. The impact on those big houses.
Yeah.
A lot became hospitals, as happened in this.
Indeed.
But the shift, the change for the downstairs staff they were thinking, I'm not going to be in service all my life. I'm going to do something else. And you saw bits of that come into the series, which was, I think it captured it very well.
Yeah.
But I personally think what was so good, due to Julian Fellowes' writing, was that you engaged with nearly all the characters. You weren't just interested in that lot upstairs. It was every character had a story to tell, and he brought that across so well.
He clearly had some insight into what it was like in amongst that kind of crowd.
Yeah.
And I think he did write it astonishingly well. Well, Maggie, I'm really pleased that you don't feel that this kind of change in the atmosphere that is so dramatic by comparison with when you first bought this house,
yes,
that it is in no way going to make you regret it. And I'm delighted that you or move, even worse. That would be terrible. So I'm delighted it's not going to do that. And I'm really grateful to you for giving us an insight into all of this. And it's been fantastic.
We thoroughly enjoyed it.
Yeah.
It was a pleasure. And quite amazing to see filming. I mean, I'm very used to meeting celebrities, but I was a Concorde stewardess, and we saw, and the big person we had, of course, was Shirley MacLaine.
Oh, yes, I'd forgotten that. Yes, that's right.
Went to the drawing room, and there she was, sitting there in this amazing costume and fully made up. Maggie Smith was on the sofa, and there was a slight shift in emphasis, and Maggie Smith's body language was sort of saying, she's getting a lot of attention. And Shirley MacLaine was by the fire, and her body language was saying, get me out of this freezing cold well, because it was very, very cold and very windy, March or April or something. So think Penelope Wilton said, "Maggie, let me introduce you to Shirley MacLaine." So I went across and said, "How do you do? And are you comfortable? Are you okay?" And she said, "Yeah, I'm just fine. I'm okay, thank you." So we had a little chat, and I said, "I must tell you, I've met your brother." And her brother is Warren Beatty. And I remember him coming on the Concorde, this is a long while ago, looking devastatingly handsome. And he was with the most beautiful film actress who I can remember, think of her face, but I can't remember her name. And this dazzling pair came on and he became very interested in the other stewardess I was working with, who was a particularly stunning girl, Annie Givens. Yes. So anyway, I was telling Shirley about this, and she said, I said, "I met her brother," and she said, "Did he behave himself?" I said, "Yes, he did. He was fine." So she said, "'Cause he's calmed down. Now he's got all those kids, because he's married to Annette Benning, and he's evidently got about 5 or 6 kids or something." There's Dame Hughes.
It's getting frosty. You're on my territory.
Bit lemon-lipped.
Well, Maggie, that's wonderful. Do you have any questions of Maggie? I hope you might. Who would like to start?
I'm just
Yeah, please.
comment about the success of Downton Abbey. I think it evolved slightly. I mean, I remember all the upstairs, downstairs, and all those things. House of Elliot, they were all very popular. But there was a certain evolution out of Gosford Park. This was Sir Julian Fellow.
Just before, yeah.
Not the same cast. Maggie Smith was in the
Yeah.
Nelsons.
Yes, yeah. It was a sort of a huge version, in fact, of Gosford Park, I think. I think that was his sort of little starter film. Just see the likeness there.
You can, and it's interesting because it also created a location problem. It was one of the reasons they came to Bampton, was that Gosford Park had used up a lot of the convenient locations in this part of England. And so they were searching with some difficulty to find decent places. And they came across us, I think, largely because of the connection with Pippa Harris.
Yes. Pippa Harris, who lives in the village, the film producer, who lives in one of the other rectories, the other side of the church, and is a friend of ours. She produces called The Midwife, and she has made 1917, the film. She's a partner of Sam Mendes, and they are about to bring out the Beatles, a film about each Beatle.
Very, very exciting message.
Yeah, it's a very talented lady. Anyway, how this came about was she was having met up with Gareth Neame, who owned Carnival, who produced this. And she said, "What are you up to, Gareth?" And he said, "Period drama. We've got the aristocrat's house, but we haven't got the village. And we need a village with old houses and hopefully a church." And Pippa's, and they didn't want to use somewhere which they'd used before.
Exactly.
Because it's so well known. And she said, "Well, come and look at my village." Of course, they had no idea this was here. And this area, when the cars go, it is like stepping back in time. It's the taking away of the cars.
Yeah.
And then a bit of judicious ivy hanging over various things that shouldn't be there.
Yes.
It is exactly like going back in time. And I'm pleased, in a way, with our house that is set so nicely, from a filming point of view, next to the church and that green at the front, that we haven't blitzed it and made it something it shouldn't be. We've left the house in its simplicity. We hadn't put ghastly gates on, that look as if they belong to an Afghanistan embassy. And we haven't put hanging baskets we've left it exactly more or less.
Yes, I mean, wherever you go in the Cotswolds these days, there are signs saying this property is protected by bulldog insurance, those sorts of things. It's just terrifying where all the great houses, so it's brilliant. It's been left that. And for them, I can imagine it was perfect scene. Any other questions?
No?
it says a lot for the skill with which you covered the ground, Maggie.
I'd like you to do one old Concord one.
It's the celebrity. All the celebrities I've said, oh yes, you'd open the door and it'd be amazing who you would see. Just extraordinary, from stars to heads of industry. But it was always the top people of every sphere of life. It was always the top person. That was what was so interesting about it. And hearing conversations like, I was saying to the president just the other day. So that's a whole another side.
I think that's a very good plan.
Yeah. But did you love I thought the other side to Downton, the costumes were out of this world. And we were privileged to be looking as close as I am to you at the quality of those costumes.
Yeah.
Some of them were from 1912, the turn of the century. They actually were. Penelope Wilton appeared one day in an outfit. It was a wedding, and she had the most amazing hat, because there were all these milliners at that time who made these things, and her jacket had all this frogging up the side. And she said the blouse was heavy silk from 1912, and they dyed it to match the colour of the jacket. It was absolutely exquisite. And another interesting thing was, because they were moving from Bampton filming to Highclere, they had to replicate the exact costume the next day. So a costume girl, and there were hundreds of those milling around, would photograph the actor or actress from top to bottom. So her necklace, her bracelet, her shoes, her bag were all bit by bit photographed to reproduce that the next day. It was all those little things that became so fascinating, I found. And the men in their wonderful, beautiful outfits all sat so nicely, and their tailoring was so beautiful.
It was.
It was delightful to see. It really was.
Yes, it would be wonderful to go back to that kind of dressing up.
How many weddings, funerals and christenings did you go through?
I don't really know. It was the odd funeral, wasn't there? There was the failed wedding of poor Edith, where the chap... yes, we all had lunch with them in the kitchen that day, do you remember? Where the chap is marrying her and then deserts her at
the altar.
And the Mary's wedding, of course, the original one, and then her final one.
Yeah.
And the scene with the fair was quite incredible as well.
Right at the beginning, that wasn't it? Series 1?
Yes.
It was, yeah.
Not Series 1. Yes, I believe it was. Because Mary has been a naughty girl, and so she's a bit feeling sorry for herself. And they had behind this wall here a helium balloon that some men were holding down, and it was to create moonlight. It was quite, wasn't it, amazing to see these chaps holding this balloon just to get that light for that fairground scene, which was filmed at night.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, I have to go and look for that. It was rather wonderful. They put the Helter Skelter up a few days beforehand, didn't they?
Yes,
and
which was
kids.
an Edwardian Helter Skelter. It's an original. And I don't know if you remember the crane was as high as the Helter Skelter with the camera on the top. And as the little boy actor came down, the crane, the camera came down with him. Yes. And they let all the little local kids all come down this Helter Skelter. It was lovely.
Yes, a lot of our kids who played on that Helter Skelter, they're now grown up. It's all very disconcerting.
Nothing else to I'm just wondering whether there was any situations that you remember where things didn't go right.
Not particularly. It all seemed to, apart from a lot of repeat filming that went on and on and on. No, not particularly. The filming of the twins was a bit of a fraught day because the family were away on holiday and they'd only jetted in that morning. And if there'd been a delay, that would have put, because it's all money, all the time, any delay. But they got to Bampton by the skin of their teeth. And I think that was quite a difficult day filming with two small children. Was not easy, but no, but generally things went well. I'd love to tell you of something going wrong, but I don't believe we did have anything, no.
Even the good old English weather looked after them pretty well, didn't it?
We did have to delay things when it poured with rain.
No, I don't remember that particularly. Even Bryce Norton had a deal with Carnival.
I'd love to know how they did.
Are you flying today, or could you hold off for a few hours? They were very accommodating, evidently. So
You're obviously not tonight because there've been 3 come over.
They did. I forgot to tell them we were here.
Oh, there was, I think, an aerial on a roof was in the earlier filming. And, of course, that was picked up by someone who was desperate to find something wrong. Oh, and they found this, also, there was another letter somewhere to a paper, yellow lines.
Yeah.
We don't have yellow
Never had
lines.
to.
I don't know where they got that from.
The eye clear.
Yeah.
Yes. There is the story that I did tell you. It's okay.
You better tell.
I'm going to tell because it's very amusing. When Edith was getting married, the vicar, I don't know if you remember the vicar in the series, was a chap who played an actor called Michael Cochrane, who is Oliver in The Archers. So his voice is very distinctive, and you'd remember him as the vicar. He was the one, when he taught, Dame Maggie always interrupted. He never finished a sentence. She talked right across him. Anyway, the vicar, they said, Maggie, would you like to watch the filming in the church? So like, Robin's okay. Would you like to see the filming in the church of Dame Edith's marriage? So I said, yes, that'd be lovely. Rod said, well, I'm not going to. So I went in the church. It was full of equipment, absolutely jam-packed. And this vicar, played by Michael Cochrane, was standing rehearsing. So I started, right, quiet please, rolling, action. So this actor, Oliver, Michael Cochrane says, dearly beloved, we're gathered here in the sight of God to join this man and this woman in holy matrimony. And there was a long pause, and then he said, what the flip comes next? But he didn't use the word flip. And the whole place just fell apart.
I suppose he must have thought that he knew it well enough. But you could. All right. Well, I think we're drawing to a close, ladies and gentlemen. You're sure you have no further questions? Well, Maggie, I can't tell you how grateful I am. It was lovely to hear about it all. It's absolutely fascinating. We need a book, I think.
A book.
So that we can tell the world. But thank you so much for your time. It's very kind.
Thank you. Very much.